I am your mother.
That joke just begged to be made. Hello lovely people and welcome back to my channel. I know I'm a little too late to the party and I'm especially being really mean to all of you who couldn't get their hands on the Pat McGrath X Star Wars collection, but I still wanted to come on and do the video because this is something I find really exciting and I just wanted to share it with you, play a bit with the palette and talk a bit about Star Wars, about the release, and I know some of you did actually get their hands on the palette, so let's just talk about it in the comment section below. Before I start, I'm very sorry for all of you people who weren't able to get your hands on this collection. Honestly, I did not expect this to be this limited edition. Normally, when Pat McGrath releases limited edition things, at least prior to Divine Rose, there's always been enough stock to go around for everyone. It's always stayed around for long enough for everyone who wants it to get their hands on it. This is the first time that I'm seeing such extreme limited edition quantities, and I don't quite get it. They could have made so much more money. Apparently they don't want to make money, I don't know. But I want to talk about the whole release fiasco later on in the video, because this is, you know, I think this is much more exciting because it is Star Wars and Pat McGrath. It's like a union made in heaven, made in the outer space that I just enjoy so much. I want to talk about Star Wars, you guys, because a lot of the people that I watched so far who talked about this collection were people who started the video with I don't really know much about Star Wars, but blah 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 blah, the eyeshadow palettes or the makeup or whatever. And I want to talk about the movies because I love the movies, okay? Not gonna lie, the original trilogy still remains my favorite for a variety of reasons. Not only because I think in terms of like filmmaking they're still the best quality-wise, they still stand the test of time, but also because for me the original trilogy is very nostalgic. I was introduced to the Star Wars movies when I was, I want to say around the age of 10, when there was no such thing as Disney Plus, Netflix, internet, any of those things. You had to go to like the video store to rent like the VHS things, put them in your VHS recorder thing and play them on your TV. That's how I got introduced to the Star Wars movies by my father, who is a huge fan. My father used to tell me stories of how when he was very young, when these movies first came out in the 70s, he would go to the cinema, his mind was so blown, everyone's mind was so blown back in the 70s because these movies were absolutely nothing anyone's ever seen before. So he went to the movies to see these several times, and I'm just, you know, I just have this mental image of my dad in his like 70s outfit with like the jeans that like get wider in the end. I don't know how they're called. Are they the Charlestons? I don't know anything about fashion, but I'm imagining my dad with that, and you know, his young self with like his mustache and a little bit of his beard, because I've seen photos of him from that time, and I just love the idea of him going to see these movies multiple times in the cinema, because I do know how that feels like. So I was introduced to these movies by my dad. I know a lot of people like to say that The Empire Strikes Back is the best movie. It is the best movie. Quality-wise, storyline-wise, it is the best movie. It is also like the biggest plot twist in the movie is revealed in that part. But to me, because of like the ending and the happy vibes, I like The Return of the Jedi a little bit more, okay? I like The Return of the Jedi. That's probably my favorite movie from the whole franchise. Now later on, when the prequel trilogy was released, I was already like end of high school, beginning of college, and I was incredibly excited when these movies were released. The Phantom Menace, that movie is a freaking abomination, okay? It is an insult to the whole franchise. We should just all collectively forget that the Phantom Menace and Jar Jar Binks ever existed, and we should just pretend it never happened. There was nothing good about this movie. Except for maybe Ewan McGregor. Ewan McGregor was probably the only good thing about this movie. Nothing else was good. Attack of the Clones, I was like, I did have a crush on Hayden Christensen at the time, so I did enjoy seeing his pretty face in the movie, but nothing more about this movie struck me as very special. Don't come at me. I didn't actually hate The Revenge of the Sith. I didn't think that was such a horrible movie. I know a lot of people like to shit on that movie and hate it, but I actually didn't hate it. I especially actually enjoyed that like last part when Anakin is fighting with Obi-Wan on that like lava river thing, and he's like slowly turning into Darth Vader. And you know, I could see the tragedy of his predicament in that last scene when Darth Vader was born on the one side and then Luke and Leia were born on the other side. I could see the tragedy of the story. And I did think Hayden Christensen portrayed like the tormented soul that Anakin is pretty okay. Maybe someone could have done a better job, sure, but for my part I did enjoy the Revenge of the Sith. So obviously I was really excited when a couple of years ago they announced that they were going to do yet another trilogy with like a whole new storyline set up, you know, after the events of the original trilogy. And I did really enjoy The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens gave me a new hope. See what I did there, Star Wars geeks? What I want to say is I really enjoyed The Force Awakens, and I really enjoyed the characters of Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver, of course. So I was very excited for this reboot, and I thought there's a lot of potential there. All of that potential was brutally murdered in The Last Jedi. I did not like that movie one bit. I walked last year out of the cinema feeling like I don't care what happens to these characters anymore. Like, there's no part of the story that gave me any sort of like emotional attachment. I think the only good thing about that movie was still the very powerful performances of Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley, but aside from that, everything else was abhorrent. It was awful. And I am so mad at what they did to Mark Hamill, to the character of Luke Skywalker. It was just not fair to give him such an incredibly shitty storyline in this movie and such a shitty ending. It was just... This movie is where it became evidently clear to me that the people who are making it did not quite think through what story they were going to tell, and they just wanted to make money from Star Wars. Like, if you're going to do something like this, at least think about the story. I'm gonna be honest with you, I have not yet seen The Rise of Skywalker because my hubby doesn't want to go see it. He was really mad after The Last Jedi. He said that this movie was trash and he doesn't want to see the last movie, at least not on the big screen. We are going to watch it when it comes on Disney Plus, but he absolutely refuses to pay cinema movie tickets for it. And I would have liked to see it, but we have to arrange someone to babysit, and I don't want to go by myself, so I have to find someone to go see it with. So I'm not really sure that it's in the stars for me to see The Rise of Skywalker in the cinema, but I'm definitely going to eventually see it when it comes on to Disney Plus. So I don't have an opinion on that movie yet, but the last movie, like I said, The Last Jedi, made me feel like I don't really care what happens to any of these characters. And if the writers didn't give a shit, then why should I? Anyway, let's chat about Star Wars, you guys. Which is your favorite movie? Which is your least favorite movie? Dare you say anything else but The Phantom Menace? And I would love to hear your thoughts on the actual movies, because I think the actual movies are just, I don't know, such a cultural phenomenon. I do actually watch The Mandalorian. We've seen like the first 5 episodes. I was really excited in the first like 1 or 2, 3 episodes, because I do really like the style of the series. I do really like Jon Favreau. I think he makes good things. I do like his style, but there's only so much you can do while only relying on the cuteness of Baby Yoda. Like I said, I haven't seen like all the episodes. There's a few episodes that I haven't seen yet, and I would really like to finish it because I heard from friends that the actual last 2 episodes are pretty good. But for me, at some point, that storyline was stagnating because there was no development in the plotline. Like, okay, you introduced us to Baby Yoda, but you're not going to tell us where he's coming from, what his significance is, what the fuck is going on. I need more. And it's been already like 2 or 3 episodes when they just go on these like loose adventures, and that's, you know, every time I hope something's going to happen which reveals like a little like grain of information on the background of Baby Yoda, and nothing happens in the end of the episode. So I think both Hubs and I were a little bit like, okay. But we heard that the last 2 episodes were really good, so we are going to finish watching it. Let's go back to the Star Wars release. So I personally only craved this item. This is the Dark Galaxy palette. So this is the only item from the collection that I really wanted to have. It is not because this is the only one that I could get my hands on. I really just wanted this item from the collection. So the collection came with the re-release of the Decadence palette, the 2 6 pans and 3 lip fetish balms. Now before I go on to talking about the contents of the actual release, I wanted to say a few words about the craze that this release was. Ever since Divine Rose, something super weird is going on with the marketing of Pat McGrath Labs, and they're making these limited edition items which cause actual anxiety and not just FOMO with people. Like, people are really mad. I was on Pat's Instagram a few days after the release because I didn't realize how limited edition it was in the beginning and how many people would be sorely disappointed that they couldn't get their hands on it. On the day of the release, I commented on Pat's Instagram. I don't know, I sincerely doubt that it's Pat McGrath herself who always replies onto the messages on Pat McGrath Reel. But I asked whether Selfridges would release the palette on the same day, and she said, yes, my love, absolutely, or something of the sort, and I was super happy. And then completely by accident, I saw on this girl's Instagram, I think her Instagram's called Chic Profile or something of the sort. She apparently lives in London and she's like a Pat McGrath Labs geek, and she posted that she had been to Selfridges that day and they had told her that they were pushing the release back to December 19th to coincide with the release of the movie. The palettes were released on Pat McGrath's website on the 13th of December. So I decided to order off Pat McGrath's website, totally unaware that the quantities are going to be so limited, because I received the early access code or whatever it's called, like the 10% off code. I went onto the website. I even actually waited around for a little bit because I was still hoping that the palettes would come on Selfridges. I didn't realize at the time that they wouldn't. I only realized it in the process. So I did even have at least an hour or two to make a decision where I want to buy the palette from. So I had absolutely no issues ordering from Pat McGrath's website. I know a lot of you people did, and I'm really sorry about that, but honestly, I've never ever had issues ordering from her website. I think it's too bad, and I know that it happened again with the Decadence palette, and I'm really happy that I didn't want the Decadence palette, because that one was like a fucking slaughterhouse. It was madness. Because what happened with this release is that you have the Star Wars people who don't give a shit about Pat McGrath Labs and they just want to have it because it's Star Wars. Then you have the Pat McGrath Labs geeks who want to have it because it's Pat McGrath Labs and they don't give a shit about Star Wars. And then you have the people who like both. And that's just a huge amount of people after a very limited amount of product, apparently. So, and what I think also was a problem is Pat didn't put a limit per person for the amount of product you can buy. So a lot of people who resell shit on eBay for like 10 times the amount managed to get quite a good amount of these eyeshadow palettes. So unfortunately, very sadly, people who truly love Pat McGrath and Star Wars are fucked, and if they want to buy these, they're going to have to part with a lot of money. I don't think we should ever give in to such marketing. I think it was, I don't know. This brings me to what I think is the biggest problem with this release, and that is it feels rushed to me. It felt like it was something that happened last minute, which is why Pat McGrath also didn't have time to come up with new things, because something that turned me off of a lot of the products in this release is that they are re-promotes of things that we've already seen. Even the Decadence palette, and I know a lot of people did not get their hands on the Decadence palette and they really wanted it, but okay, let me tell you, just so if you were after the eyeshadows themselves and not per se the Star Wars Decadence eyeshadow palette, the shades Divine Mink and Lapis Luxury are available in her singles. And so is the shade Gold Standard, so this one over here, which happens to be present not only in the Decadence palette, but also in the C-3PO palette. Which is one of the reasons I didn't want the C-3PO palette, because I already have, like, Gold Standard. The other thing you can find in the Decadence is this silver shade here, which is called Sterling. And then the eyeshadow palette that is a re-promote for the Dark Galaxy palette is this shade here, which is called Smoked Amethyst. So for those of you who have the Metalmorphosis from last year's Opulence collection, you have like a bunch of the Star Wars eyeshadows already as it is. So because of all these shades that I already have from the Decadence palette, I had no interest in buying the Decadence palette, because I love Pat McGrath, but not enough to hoard things that I have over and over again. I try to be a little bit more reasonable with myself that way. I really don't need 5 Gold Standard eyeshadows. Another shade that I already have from her collection, from the Opulence collection last year, and this is from the Bronze Temptation palette, the duochrome shade here, which is called Corruption, which is also present in There was also like a nice sparkly purple, and as you guys know, I have the most gorgeous purple from Pat McGrath, which is called Synthetica, and it is in her Idols collection. So all of this together really made me feel like I'm going to be buying the C3PO palette for that one duochrome shade over there, the shade Electron, which granted is really beautiful, but I just didn't want to spend my money on something that I already own, basically. I don't hate the release, and I don't think it's a cash grab. Of course it's a cash grab. Everything that a company releases is for them to make money. But I do think that there is good reasoning and good logic behind Pat McGrath collaborating with Star Wars. Apparently the woman is a huge fan of Star Wars, and this is not the first time she makes a Star Wars themed collection. What I do feel like is a problem with this collection though is that I feel like she just didn't take the time to make this collection even more special. Because can you imagine an actual mothership palette which is themed after Star Wars, like eyeshadows that are really based on characters, on, you know, events in the movies or whatever, like something so much more appropriate for Star Wars. I think she could have come up with something really awesome in terms of a mothership palette. The other thing is something I hadn't really thought about, but then Georgia mentioned it, the lovely Georgia Harris. If you don't know who she is, I'm going to link her channel in the description box below. She's one of my favorite people to follow here on YouTube. She mentioned that she felt like it was a really cheap trick to just slap on the images from the movie onto the packaging of the palette. And especially considering how beautiful the artwork on Mother's palettes is, like the Mothership palettes. This is not artwork, this is just, you know, slapping something that you can find online onto the eyeshadow palette. Honestly, anyone can do it. So I do agree with that. I do think that this would have been so much more beautiful if it was actual Pat McGrath artwork onto the eyeshadow palette packaging. Which is another reason why I believe this collaboration was sort of like conjured last minute. They didn't have time to really do much about it, so they just put together what they could from the existing lineup and call it Star Wars with slapping some images that you can find online. I also would have really liked if the eyeshadow names were something a little bit more Star Wars themed, because none of the eyeshadow names have anything to do with Star Wars. The cutest thing in this collection has to be that R2-D2 lip balm, the clear fetish balm. I have no use for a clear balm in my makeup routine, so I didn't buy that, even though that was the cutest, most creative packaging that they had in the whole collection. Because the Decadence palette is just gold with the Star Wars logo slapped on it. Like I said, the small palettes just have images you can download off of the internet and just slap them onto your eyeshadow palette. And I just think with the source material and with Mother's affection for Star Wars, I mean, look at her whole like makeup line. There's so much inspiration coming from like outer space. Her palettes are called freaking Mothership palettes. I mean, how much more space do you get? Clearly, she could have done so much more with this collaboration. I just felt like it was very rushed, and that is why they didn't have enough time to think it through. They did a lot of re-releases, and everything was in such limited quantities. Here's my take on the release. I don't want to bore you guys, but at the same time I really wanted to express my utter frustration with the way Selfridges handled this release, because I want to give them hell for it. They effed it up so royally. It was just so shitty what they did. Like I said, this was supposed to release on Selfridges December 13th, just like Pat McGrath's website. They pushed it on to the 19th. I stopped really following what's going on. I realized only like a few days later what had happened. But apparently after the 19th they pushed it to the 21st, and they said it's going to come on the 21st. So people kept refreshing the website on the 21st. And nothing happened on the 21st. Nothing was released. And then they dropped the palettes at 4 AM European time. What kind of fuckery is that? If you're releasing this for the European people and for the European audience, so that they get a chance as well, because Selfridges, and I really want American people to stop complaining about it, Selfridges is not the place where people get European exclusive releases. All of you can shop from Selfridges. It's not just us Europeans, it's just that for us Europeans it's easier. So stop complaining. But not only did they not release the palettes when... Oh, there's more coming. So they released the palettes at 4 AM in the morning, when clearly it's around Christmas time. I think it was the 24th. Everyone has celebrated with their families, everyone is in bed, it's all quiet everywhere. And then they drop the pallets at 4 a.m. in the morning, the pallets sell out within an hour, and all the Europeans are rightfully pissed. Because 4 a.m. is a pretty decent time for you people in the US, but not for us. And then, 6 hours later, Selfridges has the balls to announce that the pallets have dropped on their Instagram. And I'm like, are you people this dumb and misinformed? Or are you literally mocking your customers? And at this point I was taking it personally for all the people who were fucked over this, because clearly I was able to get what I wanted. So I wasn't even offended on my behalf, I was offended on the behalf of everyone else, and I just think Selfridges did a really shitty job with this release. Now that I'm done with the rambling, let's just quickly swatch the eyeshadows before I jump into the demo. One thing I wanted to point out about the packaging is I am so happy that she didn't do the flappy thing that she has for her normal sixpence, but she has just a magnetic closure like this. I've always wondered why she didn't do that with the other sixpence. Don't get me wrong, I think this looks really beautiful with like the little stringy and the flappy things. It looks beautiful, but it's so impractical because the flappies keep collapsing on themselves when you try to use the palette, so you literally have to open them up every time you want to dip your brush into them, so that's really inconvenient. This palette, on the other hand, nothing of the sort is happening. It comes with a beautiful mirror. Let's quickly swatch the eyeshadows, you guys. So the first one is one of the duochrome shades. So the first shade is the shade Cosmic, which is a gorgeous gold hot pink duochrome. I am going to swatch this against something from one of the Mothership palettes because it does remind me a little bit of, I think, VR Pink from the Subversive palette, but definitely doesn't have the same texture. This feels like a metallic duochrome shade, whereas the VR Pink shade from Subversive is definitely a much more chunky actual topper shade. Unlike the C-3PO palette, this shadow palette has a matte shade in it, which I'm really happy about, and this is a gorgeous matte shade. I did use it earlier and it performed beautifully, as you're going to see in the demo. This is the shade Venomous Void, which is a gorgeous mid-tone, very warm-toned purple. Then we have the shade Saturnalia, which is a gorgeous sort of metallic red with, I want to say, very pink undertones to it. From what I've seen when people have swatched this eyeshadow, it does have very pink undertones to it. I do want to swatch this next to the red shade from Bronze Seduction because they do look quite similar, and I'm curious to see what the difference is when they're side by side. And then on the bottom row we have the shade Smoked Amethyst, which, like I said, is a repeat from the Metalmorphosis from last year. This is a very, very deep blackened purple with purple and pink sparkles to it. It is a gorgeous shade if you want to do a smoky eye, if you want to use it in your outer corner, if you want to use it as a liner. Then we come to what is probably my favorite shade in this palette, and that is the shade Odyssey, which is a gorgeous, like, bronzy, cool-toned purple duochrome. I don't know whether you can see the shift. This is so beautiful. So there you have the shade Odyssey. This is also the shade that I have all over my lid, or like most of my lid. And last but not least we have Bronze Nebula, which is a gold. It is quite a deep gold, more like a honey gold. This is more like an amber gold. I don't really know what else to call it, but it's a pretty deep shade of gold. It almost has like pink tones to it. It is really pretty and I cannot wait to use it. Is this a duochrome? No, but it has this shade has actually very interesting undertones to it. I'm going to swatch the shade Cosmic versus the VR Pink shade. Oh, they are, like, in terms of texture they're completely different, but actually I have to say the duos are close enough for all of you who missed on the Dark Galaxy palette but do have the Subversive palette to not feel sorry about it at all. So here we have the VR Pink shade from Subversive, and here we have Cosmic from... They're not the same shade. This is a slightly deeper pink, but honestly these are so similar. I think if you put them on the eyes they're not going to be that different from one another. So here we have the red shade from the Dark Galaxy palette, and here we have the red shade from the Bronze Seduction palette. Let's swatch Dark Galaxy, Bronze Seduction. they are also pretty close to each other. This one definitely leans more pink, but that being said, this one leans more true red. They are still quite similar. If you were pining after a red eyeshadow and you already have the Bronze Seduction palette, don't pine over this eyeshadow palette because you already have a decent red in your collection from Pat McGrath. So let's do a quick little look with this palette just to see how the eyeshadows perform. The first shade I'm going to go into is this beautiful purple shade. It's a very warm, sort of like mid-tone purple, and it has a lot of like reddish tones to it. It's called Venomous Void. I want to put it through my crease, and I am contemplating also just putting it all over my lids as a base for the next shade. Do I want to do that? Yeah, let's do that. At least like 2/3 of the way in. I'm just going to apply it quite generously. So this purple matte shade over here just about blended itself out. It applied so beautifully. I almost don't want to go into the deeper shade, but I am going to because I do want to give a bit more definition to the outer corners. But honestly, I think you could probably build this shadow up a little bit more with like a pencil type of brush, and it would still give you a very beautiful definition if you don't want to tinker with something darker. Now I'm going to go into this next shade over here, which is called Smoked Amethyst. I never use this shade as a standalone shade on my lids because it's too deep for me, but I do like using it as a outer corner deepening sort of shade. It works very well for that. You can also use it as a liner if you so wish. I'm going to take the fluffy blender again and just give that a nice blendy blend. I'm going to grab a glitter glue. This is Pixie Epoxy from Fairy Cosmetics. I'm going to take the tiniest bit on the back of my hand and apply that onto my moving lid and inner corners, where I'm going to apply the more metallic shades. I do love applying metallic foiled eyeshadows, topper types of eyeshadows with my fingers because, you know, it's free. I don't have to bother with a brush. I can just wipe off my finger. I don't have to wash a brush after that. It is about the easiest and honestly best way to achieve the best impact. So, oh, this shadow looks so beautiful. Look at that. And I'm going to pop that onto pretty much most of my lid. I am going to leave the inner 1/3 free because I want to put the other topper shade next to that. Now I'm going to take a small precise brush like this, and I'm going to dip into this beautiful duochrome shade here, and that's going to go onto like the inner third and my inner corners. Onto my lower lash line, I'm going to take the tiniest bit of this dark purple shade and drag it just like here onto the outer part of my eye to connect with the, you know, the upper lid. To grab this Kiko eyeshadow stick in the number 37, which is a beautiful sort of Bordeaux color, and I'm going to apply that here on my waterline because I want to pop a bit of that gorgeous red right here to connect between the purple and the pink on my lower lashes. I'm going to pop a little bit of this shade, which is called Saturnalia, this one here, onto my waterline and a bit on the lower lash line. Ooh, that's bright and shiny and beautiful. And here you have the final look. I really love how the eye look turned out, you guys. On my lips, I'm also wearing on purpose the lip balm, the fetish lip balm that comes with this collection. I don't have it in the Star Wars packaging because I already had that lip balm, and that is the shade Flash 3. This is actually the only one that I would have bought if I didn't already have it. This is the shade Flash 3. It is a beautiful sort of like browny red. It is one of her more like pigmented and opaque lip balms because I do have another color from that line, the shade Deep Devotion, which is a beautiful purpley shade, and it actually would have paired much better with this look, and I wanted to wear that instead. But I thought, just for the sake of showing you the lip balm, because I do think you might still be able to get a hold of the lip balms. The eyeshadow palettes are a no-go, but the lip balms I think on Selfridges, last I checked, some of them were still actually available. So I just wanted to show you, in case you were lusting after something from the collection that is worth having in terms of not only like the collector Star Wars thing, but the quality of the actual product. I think Flash 3 is gorgeous. I do love her lip balms a lot, especially this color because it is so opaque and it wears so nicely, it is so comfortable, and for the lip balm it's actually quite long lasting. Of course, it's a lip balm, it's creamy, it's not going to last you the whole day, but frankly I don't understand the obsession people have with applying a lipstick only once a day. If I have something this beautiful, I want to whip it out as often as possible during the day, okay? So for me, reapplying lip products is not a problem at all, and if there was something from the collection that is still available that I would recommend highly, it is the lip balm in Flash 3. And with that, you guys, I'm going to conclude this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I'm very sorry once again for everyone who wasn't able to get their hands on this collection because they really wanted to. Honestly, I was just lucky. It was just sheer luck that I got this. So let's just wait for the next Star Wars X whatever makeup brand collaboration. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, you guys. I hope that we continue to see each other in the year 2020, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!